covering the Utes better than anyone else. This is Ute Insider Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back to the program. Happy Wednesday to you. Reminder, it's a Win Ticket Wednesday. We got some tickets to give away a little bit later. Don't miss it. Let me see here. Steve Bartle, our Utah Utes insider for KSLSports.com, joining us here. Sly sitting in for JJ, who's I'm sure enjoying the time of his life as he's on a road trip to take his family to go hang out up in Idaho. No problem. This is what
I just envision JJ being Chris Farley from Billy Madison. Everybody
on the bus.
I'll turn this bus around in your precious field trip.
That Veronica Vaughn. Yeah. So Steve Bartle joins us on the program. Stevenson Sylvester, of course, played linebacker at Utah, played linebacker in the NFL for the Steelers, and so he dips in and gives us some of the ideas. That's why he was extra offended on Saturday by the lack of stopping the run by Kansas State.
Oof.
Steve, you were in that stadium. We talked a little bit about that earlier this week, about how wild of a crowd that was, but some of the people left early, so some of the crowd wasn't there to cheer them on. What was your takeaway from this whole thing? Watching Utah go through this whole season, but get to 9-2, and on the cusp of going 10-2. What did you think of last week's game against Kansas State?
Yeah, one of the most incredible games that I've got to witness. From both sides, right? To watch Kansas State do what they did to Utah, it was really impressive because Utah has really dominated this season and really on both sides of the ball at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Outside of that Texas Tech game, they've had their way with the rest of the Big 12, and you just kind of grow accustomed to that being the case. And Kansas State came in, and throughout the week, I just had a feeling, right? You go back the week before, and Kansas State struggled against Oklahoma State. I think they won 14-6. The offense looked, pretty bad, and a lot of people talked about Kansas State having melded in, and they're done. They're quitting on the season, and I just had this sneaky suspicion that they were going to come out against Utah with something to prove, right? Obviously, it's easy to overlook Oklahoma State given the situation that they're in. And I think Kansas State came in ready to go, and they had a plan that Chris Kleiman installed and a message to his team. I think he talked about their desire to come into Rice-Eccles Stadium and run it down Utah's throat. And to their credit, that's what they did for 55 minutes of that game. It was shocking to watch Utah struggle and give up a big play after big play. It was a shock. I remember me and Furlong, we were at halftime, we were scrolling through the game log season after season looking for, the highest rushing total in a game, let alone a half, because we're looking at the number. It was, 348 at the half, and, just a shocking number. So, from that perspective, right, Kansas State coming in, punching Utah in the mouth, with this team, just continuing to fight back, continuing to press forward and fight till the bitter end. I think that, above all else, is what Kyle Whittingham prides himself on, that he's never going to die, he's never going to give in, and that's what we saw Saturday night is, Utah took the punches, but then, late in that game, they got that play on the 2-point conversion. Teo Johnson takes it the other way, and suddenly, that's the spark that Utah needed to get it going. And even despite, Devin Dampier's, fumbles that led to that touchdown score and that 2-point conversion play, to see Dev bounce back after that mishap and make the plays he did down the final 7 minutes of the game was really, really impressive. And like Whittingham said in his post-game presser, they were treated to a pretty special event. It was one for the ages, and the crowd that was there was still a pretty good presence of Utah fans. I would say probably 50% of the stadium emptied out, but the crowd that was there still made it when Dev ripped off that run and then got it into the end zone, and then Lander Barton intercepts the Avery Johnson pass a couple plays later. that was still one of the loudest moments that I've experienced being on the field at Rice Eccles Stadium over the last few years.
Yeah, man, I've seen Coach Witt pissed off. I'm interviewing him as we go into halftime, but I haven't seen him that mad since UNLV 2007. When we got blanked out on on the scoreboard, and rightfully so. It just doesn't make sense. It was kind of a head scratcher. But in these games, right, you do have ugly games during the season where it's kind of a battle, but at the end of the day, you pull out the W. I kind of felt like, I don't want to know, Steve, were you feeling that from Kansas State? They were getting more and more energy with the stuff, because of course, Coach Witt alluded to it. He's like, it felt like basic power roll. It felt like basic away zone, basic counter, and we just weren't guarding well. Did you feel like Kansas State was getting more and more energy and more confidence, as they kept breaking runs and allowed it to get to 300-plus rushing yards in the first half?
Yeah, absolutely, and rightfully so, right? You see one, you've got that, you get hungry for the next one. And then you rip off another one, and you get hungrier for the next one. And there's just this growing belief and confidence that these players build when you see these big plays ripped off, right? When Utah the week before, despite what they did on the defense side of the ball, giving up 500 yards, they still made plays on that side. But the offense, ripping off big play after big play, it's a big motivating thing to get back out there and make the next big one.
Right.
And so, I think, for Kansas State, it was, again, it was as impressive a performance that I've seen. They just came out and really controlled the line of scrimmage, controlled the trenches, generated a lot of movement that made it difficult for Utah's linebackers to throw properly and to get downhill and get a clean hit on Joe Jackson and get a clean hit on Martin and Johnson and those guys. So it was, it was an impressive performance, and they continue to build momentum. But again, for getting back to Utah, you take those punches, and then you finally get a stop in that second half to that's where you start to build some of your confidence. And then you get it into that late fourth quarter. You finally get a couple of big stops again, and you make the play down the stretch to seal it. And I think, that's just what this game is all about, is building play after play, momentum play after momentum play. That's really what this game is all about.
Steve, as you see this Kansas game and it looms, and obviously, I don't think Witt is the kind of guy that goes, we got to make sure to run it up on these guys. I think he likes to beat the heck out of teams because that's just the style of ball.
Physically, like the score doesn't need to showcase how bad you beat a team.
It has in a lot of these weeks, and I think Kansas is ripe for one of those because it feels like they're a team that has massively underperformed over the past 2 or 3 seasons, Steve. And so what do they have on the line as they welcome the Utes into Lawrence?
Yeah, Kansas, 5-6 on the year. They're going to be battling for bowl eligibility. So this is a big one for them, and this is also senior day, and they've got a pretty big senior class. With that, I was told I think it's going to be about 33 players that they honor on senior day. But with that, it's different than what it's been in the years past, right? When you talk about senior day, because a lot of these guys, they're just here for a year and that sort of thing. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic, right? How many of these guys, have been with Kansas for an extended period of time? I don't really know, but I think there is going to be motivation to come out and try to replicate what Kansas State did, right? I think that's where Kansas has found a lot of success, is in their rushing attack with Jalen Daniels and in that option with Daniel Highshaw and those guys. And they're going to try to do what Kansas State did. And for Utah, this is a great test to kind of showcase that, the work you put in this week to address those issues, to address those mistakes and mishaps and the lack of physicality, the lack of discipline and toughness that you need to defend the run. This is your opportunity to showcase that you can still be that dominant defense against the run. So, this is going to be a great test for Utah because there are some interesting factors going into it. It's going to be a tricky game with it being a Friday morning game, the day after Thanksgiving. I know the team is going to be flying out Thursday night and getting there, that night and all that. But I think this is going to be, a tough test and a good test. And despite the record, Kansas has been competitive. They've just given up games late in the second half, where they're competitive, they're going back and forth for 3 quarters, but then they just fail to make the plays in that fourth quarter. And so for Utah, you don't want it to get there, right? You don't want it to get to that fourth quarter where Kansas is hanging around, lingering, and because they're going to want to prove that they can get it done. And against Utah, with that number 13 ranking attached to their name, that's a big opportunity for them to get to bowl eligible, to send the seniors off with a win, and to make a statement that, the thing that you struggled with all season, you finally overcame it, you finally figured that out. I know that that's something Lance Leipold is going to be harping on this week with his guys as well. So this is going to be a good test. And obviously, given the record of Kansas, it's not going to do much for Utah in terms of helping their resume and all of that sort of stuff. But this is going to be a one where you have to go in this taking care of business and come in there with that mindset.
Yeah, you've now had a few days since the game has kind of let off and been able to see everything. I want to get your impressions of Coach Witt, right? After that crazy up and down wild finish on Saturday from the post game, him to his Monday press conference. I know you were there, and now a couple days after it was practice last night and Monday. What have you gotten vibe from Coach Witt and how he's feeling about this moment, of course, about this season, and then, of course, his whole career?
Yeah, I think obviously we understand where Kyle is at in his career, right? He is in the twilight of his career. He's in the final, days, months, years, to go that far. He's in the final couple stretches of his career. That's the stage that he's in. And so, each and every moment is kind of a unique one because it could be the last, right? It could be the last that Kyle gets to coach Utah in Rice Central Stadium. And I think it was really telling. I shouldn't say telling, but I think we all read into, his press conference when he, got choked up talking about the seniors and this being their last opportunity to get a win at Rice Central Stadium. I thought that was really interesting. But I in terms of how he's approached this season, we know Kyle, he doesn't want it to be, he doesn't want to be a distraction. He wants the focus to be on his guys, on his team. And that's kind of the approach he's taken all season, is focusing on his players, his coaches. And I think he doesn't want it to be a problem. He doesn't want it to be a distraction. And so, I don't know where Kyle is at in terms of
nobody
back.
knows. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where he's at in terms of coming back next year or retiring. There's, having conversations with people. There's plenty that side on both sides of that discussion. But I know that Kyle, he's still sharp. He's still, energetic. He's still coaching with a passion that you love to see. And I think, for him, I think he is taking greater appreciation of, where he's at in his career. It's been interesting to follow him over the last 5 years, being up there at just about every press conference, being able to talk to him in the post game, and just kind of getting a feel for Kyle and who he is. And I do feel like there's been more of that appreciation for the bigger picture and that sort of stuff from him this season. So we'll see what happens with Kyle. Obviously, but I think he's still capable of coaching next season and beyond. But I think the emotion was really interesting to see for him, to say the least.
All right, Steve Bartle, our Ute insider for KSLSports.com. Steve, have fun out there in, whatever version of fun they have out there in Lawrence, and enjoy the holiday tomorrow a little bit, and have some turkey on us. And you know what? Just slide that P card at a turkey place, and you say Alex gave you permission to be able to have some of that. So have fun out there, man. We're looking forward to what you guys put out there online, and we'll follow all of it.
Appreciate you guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time, all right?
There you go. Steve Bartle, everybody. Absolutely.
That guy works, man.
He does.
He is out there. Gotta appreciate his work. Absolutely love it, man. It's crazy. Yeah.
I wonder what this is gonna. I'm kind of going back and forth on Twitter with some of these guys chatting about it is
Twitter. Come on now.
I don't really love it, but it is. I mean, I'm not fighting. They make great points. It's just like, look, it's the same thing we talk about like every year. bad losses versus good wins versus like okay wins versus okay losses. Like we have these back and forths, and you're like, what does that even freaking mean? A decent, that was an ugly win. You know, it's like you just freaking won. Who cares? Just get it done. I don't know. I'm just bracing for the ridiculousness of the explanation of what we're going to get in a couple of weeks. If BYU falls in the championship game, if Texas Tech loses to BYU, like, come on, they're going to stay, right? I have no idea because I feel like then they'll be in this 2-loss mix where everybody goes, yeah, but let's look at your SOR and your SOS and your PPI. And it's like, come on, man. I'm not doing it. I don't want to get into all that. There's no way that 2 ACC teams should get in this year in a weak ACC year and not 2 Big 12 teams being considered. It's crazy to me. All right. We'll come back. We got more to go around the corner when we return a Would You Rather, a holiday edition of Would You Rather. So stay here, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.